Hi and welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, welcome to it anyway. Yes, I am still doing the January thing where I'm only watching movies that I previously haven't watched. And it's going well. There are a couple of movies I really wanted to watch but I couldn't, but for the most part, things are going well. So the three movies I have for you this time around are from this big chungus. The Shawscope Volume 1 box set, which has 12 movies on 8 discs plus 2 discs of soundtrack from 2 of the movies. From 4 or 5 of the movies. So there's a bit of a soundtrack thing there. It comes in a really nice package. It's crazy expensive though. It cost me over $200 Australian. But it's worth it. It comes with this booklet which has a ton of lovely stuff. Details of the movies, production notes, all sorts of other things, and the movies themselves are in a format that's not really user-friendly. Sorry about the noise there. It's not really user-friendly, but they're like this. In this enormous book with lots of original artwork and things like that in it. Really like it. It's a fantastic artifact. It's not going to sit well on the shelves. I'm going to have to figure that out. But it's worth the money. Based on the 3 movies that I've seen so far from it, it's definitely worth the money. The extras are on point and extensive. They interview some actors and some of the people who are involved with it. There's an interview with John Woo for one of these films, which is quite exciting, talking about him acting as an assistant director on one of these movies. And you know it's good if you got John Woo, young John Woo, as an assistant director. But the 3 movies themselves are, 2 of them are slightly similar in that they're wuxia movies. One of them is crazy. And so I'll talk about the first one of the wuxia movies first, then go on to the crazy one, then go on to the second wuxia movie, which is over the top and wonderful. The first movie is King Boxer, also known as Five Fingers of Death, from 1972. It's directed by Chang Kwak-jong, who was actually South Korean, and worked in Hong Kong for a while as an action director. It stars Lo Lei as a guy called Chow Chi-hu, who is a student at a martial arts school. His Sifu wants to send him to another martial arts school so that he can prove his martial arts. He's kind of sweet on his Sifu's daughter, and so he gets sent to another school run by a different Sifu, who basically says to him, "You're not that good, you can go work in the kitchen for a year." So he works in the kitchen for a year and gains his skills while working in the kitchen and training in martial arts as well, and becomes kind of a favourite of his Sifu. This being a 1970s wuxia movie about martial arts schools, there's a bad martial arts school as well. And this one runs kind of like a criminal gang. And so there's a big martial arts competition. All of the schools are going to be going up against each other. And Chow is selected to be the main contestant for his martial arts school in this competition. His Sifu has also entrusted him with the iron palm technique, a special technique which makes someone pretty much invincible. His Sifu realizes that he's getting older and his skills are waning, and so he gives Chow the manual for training in this. So he's got to plunge his hands into a wok full of hot gravel and train himself and increase his chi and all that kind of thing, which is always a lot of fun. Meanwhile, the bad martial arts school has recruited 3 martial artists, 3 judo masters from Japan, to basically mess shit up. Chow encounters the bad guys, gets his hands smashed to buggery, and then has to rebuild himself. So it's got parallels with Doctor Strange in a way, and Doctor Strange's hands being messed up and then suddenly he finds a power. This is pretty much the same thing. The movie is great. It's one of the first Shaw Brothers movies that did wuxia movies without too many weapons. Before this, a lot of the wuxia movies you see from Shaw Brothers and other studios relied on weapons, nunchucks, 3-section staffs, all that kind of thing. Flying guillotines for that matter. But this one, they concentrate on hand-to-hand combat. And it works really well. The fight choreography is on point. It's still got a lot of that jumping through the air stuff and a lot of trampolines and wire work. But it feels a lot more grounded than a lot of those movies at that time. Now, this movie came out in 1972. which was the same time when Golden Harvest was making incredible boku bucks with the early movies of Bruce Lee, things like Way of the Dragon and The Big Boss. So the plot parallels Fists of Fury, the Golden Harvest movie, in that it's about rival martial arts schools and things like that. But Fists of Fury was a lot more political than King Boxer is, and that's kind of okay, and it also had the advantage of having Bruce Lee. Fists of Fury made more money than Sound of Music did in the Hong Kong market. It really was an enormous phenomenon. But King Boxer, I think, I like more, even though Bruce Lee is charismatic as hell. There are some really nice bits of King Boxer that I like. There's that really weird use of music from other movies and TV series for that matter. They use the kind of siren sound from Quincy Jones' soundtrack to the TV series Ironside, which is this. And they also use some music from Diamonds Are Forever. Some of the John Barry action music from Diamonds Are Forever gets used as a bit of a sting during the martial arts thing. Golden Harvest and Shaw Brothers did a lot of that during the 1960s and 1970s. They just basically ripped off music from wherever they could. And for some reason they got away with it. So for the big climax battle, we get Chow going up against the 3 Japanese martial artists, and then running all the way to the competition and beating the bad martial arts school. And meanwhile, there's a subplot with another student in Chow's martial arts school who kind of fingers him for the bad guys. And things don't go quite the way he wants them to, and then he's got to get revenge on the bad guys. I'm not going to spoil that one for you, but it takes a very dark turn, and it really does give us some really tense moments. And some kind of body horror almost elements as well. But having that subplot in there made it just that little bit more interesting than it might have been otherwise. For me, it comes back to the fight choreography. It's really great. There are things like when people get bashed and fall on the floorboards. You get dust rising up from the floorboards just to kind of increase the visual impact of these guys slamming against the floor. And those little bits of business and stuff like that really work for me. And they very much work to enhance the kind of pseudo-reality of the martial arts tournaments. The blood's the usual kind of thick Kensington Gore-looking blood that we get in all these martial arts movies, as indeed we did in a lot of European horror movies as well. And Lole does a fantastic job of giving us the hero. He gives us the hero from the naive young guy up until the seasoned martial artist with the wonderful power of the iron palm technique. And for me, it really works. I would have loved to have seen this movie back in the 70s. When I was watching martial arts films, I was watching martial arts films before Bruce Lee died. I used to go to little Chinatown cinemas that had really bad subtitles and watch martial arts movies from the time I was about 15. And they were great. You go in there, most of the audience is Chinese. There's maybe 1 or 2 other Guaylo in there. But for the most part, the audience is entirely Chinese. The food on sale at the concession stands were kind of Chinese snacks and not English or Australian snacks. But there was a mood to them. There was a kind of grotty little cinema. It may not have originally been a cinema at all. It may have been just retrofitted to be a cinema. But the little Chinatown cinemas that we had in the 1970s had an atmosphere about them that in a way paralleled a lot of the atmosphere and a lot of the set designs in these martial arts movies. So it was a very big nostalgia kick for me. The disc is really crisp. The transfer is perfect. It's a 2K transfer and it is perfect. And as far as being a solid action film, it very much is. And I really enjoy watching King Boxer, a.k.a. 5 Fingers of Death. And I think 5 Fingers of Death's a much better title. That's the one the Americans gave it when they released truncated and dubbed versions of it in the 1970s. The second one of the movies is kind of an outlier in this box set, in that it's not a martial arts film. It's a crazy movie from 1977, which was made in response to a 1976 American film. And it is in its own way crazy. It's the Mighty Peking Man from 1977, and it is just off the wall crazy. It's about a giant kind of primate humanoid who is found in the mountains of the Himalayas, and it was made in response to the Dino De Laurentiis 1976 version of King Kong. And for me, having seen the Dino De Laurentiis one a couple of years ago, it's kind of more entertaining. Even though you've got Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange and Charles Grodin, and you've got Carlo Rambaldi's special effects for the ape, the Mighty Peking Man has a craziness and an off-the-wall WTF about it that, for me at least, makes it much more entertaining. Danny Lee plays a character called Johnny Fong, who is kind of down on his luck. He's broken up with his fiancée because she was in flagrant delicto with another guy, and so he agrees to go on this expedition into India to find the giant ape, bring it back to Hong Kong and display it as a carnival attraction almost. Kind of in the same way as Gorgo was in that 1960 English film. So they head off to India, and it was shot on location in Mysore in India. So you've got some kind of proper Indian locations. And the expedition sets off in 7 ox carts. For some reason they're using ox carts for this expedition. Don't know why, but it gives it a little bit of mise-en-scène that's interesting. And so they head off into the jungle, and all sorts of stuff happens. They go through little villages where there are elephant stampedes. They're attacked by a wild tiger, which bites off a guy's legs. And then the head of the expedition shoots him because he doesn't want to give him medical attention. You get guys swallowed up by quicksand at the same time as the tiger attacks. And all of this crazy stuff, they start climbing the mountains and the cliffs. And after a while, the head of the expedition just goes, no, we're going back. Don't want to do this. So they all go back and leave Johnny behind in his tent overnight. So he wakes up and everybody else is nicked off. So he starts climbing the mountains, and eventually he gets found by the giant humanoid ape. But that's not the crazy bit. The crazy bit is that there's a blonde female Tarzan as well, who in the English version is called Samantha, and is the survivor of a plane wreck when she was a little girl, and she has been raised by the giant ape in a nice little cliff top Barbie cave, where she lives. She's got fruit, she's got a nice bed, she's got furs to sleep on and things like that, and she swings around the jungle wearing a tiny kind of leather bikini. She's played by a Swiss actress called Evelyn Kraft, who's kind of okay in the role. She's got a very 1970s look about her. I'm not sure where she got the makeup in the jungle, but for some reason she's got makeup. And she knows her way around. And then Johnny and Samantha fall in love, and they was making mad, passionate love in the cave, while the giant ape looks on and then gets jealous and goes off in a snit. Johnny convinces Samantha to help him bring the giant ape back to Hong Kong, and they do that on the deck of a freighter, kind of in a way that parallels the really cool scenes in Godzilla vs. Kong from last year. So they get the ape back to Hong Kong. The bad guys chain it up and put him on exhibition, and the audience is kind of nasty to him. He's chained up, he's in a cage. The handlers are prodding his feet with poles, and things aren't going well. Meanwhile, Johnny is caught by Samantha macking on his ex-girlfriend. Samantha runs away, and then she's caught by the bad guy and sexually assaulted. Now, that's kind of 1970s, but it still doesn't sit well in the context of a much lighter film. But on the bright side, the giant ape smashes into the building, grabs the guy and throws him to the ground and stomps on him. We then get the ape going totally nutso. It climbs a Connaught building, which at the time was the tallest building in Hong Kong, and starts getting attacked by helicopter gunships and all the rest of it. The military, of course, at the time in Hong Kong was run by Englishmen, so you see a lot of white people ordering people around. And they come up with this weird plan on getting rid of the giant ape, which is to fill the water tanks on the top of the building with petrol, with gasoline, and then setting explosives and setting it off so they can incinerate the giant ape. So basically, it's a bit like having a spider in your house and then you burn the house down. So that's their plan. Meanwhile, Johnny and Samantha have a reunion, and they go up to the top of the building to talk to the ape for reasons, and the usual King Kong thing happens. The weird thing about it, and the thing I love about it is, first off, there are random things that happen all through the movie. And the Giant Peking Man suit is pretty sketchy. And I found out, which is even weirder than the fact that the suit is sketchy, is that the Shaw Brothers movie studios put out a call, and 300 people came to the studio and let them cut their hair so they can make the costume out of real human hair. So basically, every time you see the costume, that's 300 people's haircuts. The suit itself isn't too bad, but the mask doesn't sit well, particularly around the eyes. It's got some good prosthetic teeth and things like that, but around the eyes it just doesn't work. And there are a few inserts where they use an animatronic puppet head, which looks nothing like the head of the guy wearing the monkey suit. But there's a gonzo weirdness to the movie, and like I said, random things keep happening. There's a disco dance scene which is thrown in for no particular reason as well, beside the fact that it's 1977. Evelyn Kraft's character gets a few wardrobe malfunctions, which is very 1977 as well. But the weirdest thing for me, apart from everything else that's weird, like the quicksand and the guy getting his legs bitten off and then getting shot by the other guy, and the giant ape watching them make love, is the fact that in the last 10 minutes of the movie, the suspense is really good. The suspense of them going up into the top of the building and talking to the giant ape and trying to work out a way to stop him from being killed works well. The whole scenes are shot well, they're cut well, the model effects are really good, and the suspense really ramps up in a way that it never did for me with the 1976 King Kong. And that's kind of cool. I really appreciated that and I loved it. It made this movie for me a lot better than it would have been otherwise. Now, I hadn't seen this previously. I know it came out on VHS in Australia back in the day, but it's one of the ones I never saw because it looked too tacky and crappy. But in this version, it works well. The full Chinese version is really good. Apparently there was an 80-minute version of it done for Germany where they cut out a whole bunch of stuff. This version worked. Mighty Peking Man is a lot of fun to watch, even though it's absurd and there's nothing realistic in it in any way. There's some really sketchy reprojection of a guy shooting an elephant. There's just so many WTF moments in this film that it's delicious. That brings me to the third movie, which for me is the best, which is The Boxer from Shantung, which was directed by Che Chang and Sui Li Pao. Sorry if I mispronounce any names here, I do apologise for that. And it stars Ching Li as a guy called Ma Zhongzhen, who was a real person in Chinese history in the 1850s. But this one's set in 1920 Shanghai. They've updated the character to the 20th century. And he plays a very skilled martial artist from Shantung who comes to Shanghai to make his fortune. He makes a friend called Zhao Jingbei, who is kind of an innocent character. He's not as good a martial artist in any way as Ma is, and he just supports him. So Ma works as a labourer for a living. There are a lot of wealthier guys. There are two main gangs in Shanghai in this movie. There's the one run by Master Tang Si, played by David Chiang, who's very charismatic. I like David Chiang in this movie a lot. And there's also the gang run by Boss Yang. Now, Tang Si and Ma have a nice relationship. They're kind of friendly. Tang Si sees that Ma is an up-and-comer and kind of respects him for that, and they have a cordial relationship given that one of them's a mob boss and the other one's a labourer. But Ma's star starts to ascend. He goes in a fight competition with a Russian wrestler played by Australian-Italian wrestler Mario Milano. Now, Mario Milano was a hero in the Australian-Italian community in the 1960s and 1970s. He was on World Championship Wrestling, which was on at lunchtime on Channel 9 every weekend. And he was a hero. He was one of the good guy wrestlers. He was quite good at what he did. He was part of the Melbourne Italian community. And he was one of the guys who got a lot of props and a lot of respect in Australia. in the pro wrestling circuit. In this one he plays a giant Russian wrestler who goes up against a whole bunch of different people and beats the shit out of a lot of very short and very wiry Chinese guys before Mark comes along and cleans his clock and gets a fairly good payout for it. He then starts to gather kind of a community behind him. All of the local businesses start paying him protection money even though he never asked for it. And almost by default he becomes a mob boss. And this puts him up against Boss Young, who wants to run things. Now Ma decides he's going to take over an alley where there's a casino and a bunch of brothels, because why wouldn't you? And this puts him in conflict with Boss Young. So there are a whole bunch of battles in this alley full of brothels and a casino. There's some really good martial arts in this. And you've got to remember, this is the movie that John Woo was assistant director on and learned a lot from the directors on how to do martial arts scenes. And you can see the direct influence of this movie on the career of John Woo. So Ma gets a lot of good martial arts battles in there. Tan Si is taken out by Boss Young in a very interesting group of scenes, which show exactly how cool David Chiang was as an actor. And then a meeting is set up between Ma and Boss Young in a 2-level tea house. And that's where the climactic battle starts and finishes. And it is over the top wonderful. It's bloody, it's nasty. There are so many beautifully choreographed fight moments in this movie, particularly in those scenes. Ma fights a whole bunch of guys while he has a hatchet embedded in his stomach and takes out all of the bad guys. It's kind of almost like Scarface, the De Palma version of the original Scarface. And it's got a lot of that kind of manic fury about it. And it works incredibly well. And there's some good scenes on him figuring out how to get up the stairs to take out Boss Yang. And his solution to it is very innovative and interesting. This is balls to the wall martial arts action. This is the kind of movie you got to watch with a bunch of people and popcorn and rapid antigen tests and just go to town with. It is full tilt boogie. Now I've only seen these 3 movies out of the box set so far, and for me the box set from Shantung is the best of them. I have seen one of the other movies in the box set, 5 Deadly Venoms, a few years ago, but the rest of them are still waiting to be seen. But the box set of Shawscope Volume 1, if you've got the money to get it, I recommend you get it, particularly if you're interested in exploitation cinema of the 70s, and particularly if you're interested in Hong Kong action films. For me, so far, and knowing what I know about 5 Deadly Venoms, this is a fantastic box set to have in your collection. I just loved it so far. I'm going to watch a few of the other movies in here. Let me see. I've got the card here, which is one of those cards that detaches from the back of the box. There's the Chinatown Kid, Crippled Avengers, Heroes of the East, a movie called Dirty Ho, H.O., which is about a dirty guy who's of Chinese ethnicity, Challenge of the Masters, Executioners from Shaolin, 5 Shaolin Masters, Shaolin Temple, and the movies that I've already mentioned. But really going to enjoy those ones. So thank you very much for watching. I really enjoyed these movies. It was so much fun. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing and leaving a comment. You can also support the channel at patreon.com/paleocinema. And as always, please look after yourselves. I found out today that 3 family members have got COVID, and I don't want anybody else to get it. So look after yourselves. Wear a mask. Get the jabs. Get the extra jabs. Do what you need to do. It's not a pleasant disease at all. So watch some good martial arts movies. Watch some bad martial arts movies, because even bad martial arts movies are good. Take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you next time.